just try and see if you can make it happen and act quickly and decisively.
Hey, kids. Welcome back to the Wild Business Growth Podcast. This is your place to hear from a new entrepreneur every single Wednesday morning who's turning wild ideas into wild growth. I'm your host, Max Branstetter, founder and podcast producer at MaxPodcasting, and you can email me at max@maxpodcasting.com to save time with your high-quality podcast. This is episode 204, and today's guest is Carlton Calvin, who has a name you can dance to and a story you can scoot to. Carlton is the president and co-founder of Razor. Yes, Razor as in Razor Scooter, one of the most iconic toys of the 2000s. Carlton is the man responsible for bringing Razor to the US back in the year 2000. And in this interview, we talk, in addition to the Razor Scooter story, which of course we talk about that, we talk all sorts of other nostalgic products that Carlton had a pretty big hand in, including the Ripstick, the hoverboard, electric scooters, Pogs and Slammers, fingerboards. The list goes on and on and on. This is Short and Sweet with Carlton Calvin. Enjoy the show. Alrighty, we are here with Carlton Calvin, the Mr. Razor, we'll call you, co-founder and president of Razor. And I think as somebody who grew up in the 90s and 2000s, and anybody who's kind of been around that era, Razor scooters were one of the most impactful things of childhood, and still so many amazing memories and so much nostalgia, and awesome to see what you're up to today. So anyway, I'll cut myself short. Carlton, thank you so much for joining. How you doing today?
My pleasure. I'm doing great.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you. Well, I'm actually riding a scooter as we do. No, I'm just kidding. That would be pretty cool, though. But we're going to get into the Razor story, all sorts of things in your entrepreneurial journey. So on that note, I'd love to start off with your interest in toys in the first place. I know that before Razor, you kind of got into the whole Pogs and Slammers business.
Yes.
Which is another great, fantastic, nostalgic memory, but that's a world of its own. What is it about toys and these kind of trending toys that excited you in the first place?
Well, first of all, from seeing you, I can tell that you're the perfect age, and you've evolved through all the businesses that I was involved in, even before I started Razor. But I didn't actually have a particular interest in toys, although I do think I always used to say I understood the mind of a 10-year-old boy pretty darn well. I sort of was stuck in that phase when I started, getting into business on my own. My background is, I was working for a big law firm. I took a leave of absence from that law firm and then started tinkering around, just exploring the idea of going into business for myself. And just through weird happenstance, I started getting into toys with the Pogs and the Slammers. And then when I did that, then I just followed up because I was already in that industry, and that's how it just kept going after that.
So law, Pogs, and Slammers, I think a combination.
Yes.
That's the typical route from law school.
Typical. Yeah, exactly.
What is it about Pogs and Slammers specifically that caught your attention?
Oh, it was a hot craze in LA at the time when I was casting around, and I was actually working on a different project of doing some children's book publishing. And I was working with a artist, and they said, "Oh, we're doing work for Pogs. We're doing illustrations for Pogs." And I was driving through Arizona, so you would understand. I don't know how much of your audience will know, but Pogs is like a gambling game for children with little discs. They're paper discs that were originally at the top of milk caps to keep milk fresh. Part of the game is to have a slammer where you throw it at the Pogs and you try to flip it over. The slammer is, the more interesting piece. And I was driving through Arizona, and I was seeing paperweights with real scorpions embedded in them. And I thought to myself, oh, wow, a 10-year-old boy would like a real scorpion embedded in his slammer. And so I that's how I got started. I decided I was going to put real scorpions inside slammers.
As a former 10-year-old boy, I can agree that the thought of scorpions, I think, spoke to my younger self, and that's awesome. Also makes me think of, Jurassic Park, the, like, mosquito in the amber.
That's exactly what it looks. Yeah, and that's actually I called up the Natural History Museum in Los Angeles and asked them how they preserve, specimens in clear plastic, and that's how I got started in with the technology.
I love the research. It's awesome. So speaking of being quick and creating hot crazes and toys and trends and everything in that ballpark, let's talk Razor. When and how did you first hear about this idea that kids were somewhere in the world were starting to play with scooters and having a great time?
Again, as background, the thing that my hot trend that I was working on at that time were fingerboards, which you probably remember too. The
Yeah, yeah, plenty of those, which became a funny competition because some kids at school were pretty good and can do, like, pop shove-its and different tricks with them, and then I think vast majority of kids, like myself, where we're extreme. I mean, I couldn't even skateboard on a regular skateboard, so finger skateboards were, even harder, I think.
yeah. So again, you're the perfect person to be interviewing me about this. You're the perfect age.
Thank you, thank you.
I was doing fingerboards, and we actually working with the guy who invented the fingerboards. Later, Tech Deck was another company that copied what we were doing, and they were a much bigger and more savvy company. So they became the famous brand. But fingerboards was our brand and the original name for what this was called. But in any event, enough about fingerboards. I was doing those, and I was like doing all kinds of like extreme sports for your fingers, like bikes and surfboards in addition to the skateboards. I read in the LA Times that there was a new extreme sports craze in Japan called, and people were riding on, high tech advanced scooters, and the brand was Razor. And I called the factory that made them, and within a couple of weeks, we were partners globally to, manufacture and sell the Razor scooter. And that's how that
Oh
started.
my god. Wait, so how in the world did you strike a deal within a couple weeks there?
It just again, this is what I would say to entrepreneurs is, I mean, and I've always felt did this once I started, is don't be afraid to just try and see if you can make it happen and act quickly and decisively.
I mean, this is one of the biggest splashes of all time in the toy world and in fun and scooter world, obviously. But at the start, what are some key steps when you look back on it that helped this baby take off so much?
The real answer is capacity. My partner had a tremendous capacity to manufacture, but real crazes people like to take credit for causing them, which I never do. It was just word of mouth. I mean, and word of mouth turns in, we had a public relations agency, but that was just to field all the people that wanted to work with us. It was in People magazine. It was, there was an illustration on the cover of the New Yorker with a adult riding a Razor scooter. There was, we partnered with Burger King. I mean, it was just endless, word of mouth, and news stories were everywhere. And so yeah, you didn't need to do anything. And I've been involved in same with Pogs and Slammers. I've been in and fingerboards. These things, when it gets inside the mind of a 10-year-old boy and they start talking to each other on the playground, there is nothing that will cause demand to rise like that.
What is it about that original model that you think people just totally gravitated to?
I mean, it's sometimes very hard to explain, but obviously, they were much better scooters. They were skateboard wheels, polyurethane wheels that just let you go really far and fast and glide easily. And they were aircraft quality aluminum. They were compact. It really was a big improvement on the clunky air scooters that were before them. And actually, and it started, really did start with adults using them. And like even they were popular in high tech, warehouses in Silicon Valley. It was like part of the .com craze, but it's a genuinely great, scooter. And it's sort of like, in 1997 or whatever, there was a slight improvement on the yo-yo. They made a like a yo-yo that would spin at the bottom on its own and then return, and it caused the biggest yo-yo craze. With no advertising, nothing, but again, just playground word of mouth. Like sold 50 million yo-yos or something. It was ridiculous. So yeah, the technological improvement on a great item like a scooter can make a craze.
First of all, every new thing you mention like triggers a different memory in my mind. Like now I'm thinking of like these cool yogos we used yogas. These cool yo-yos we used
This
to
is
have that would
nostalgia. I
like
know.
spin like you said, or that would light up, and there were some really really good ones. So this whole interview is just like walk down memory lane for me. So thank you. On the razor front, you mentioned that your partner had the capacity, which is obviously hugely important. How early on in that process of starting to distribute in the U.S. did you realize that, oh my god, this is crazy? Like we need to make like millions of these things every day to meet demand?
No, no, immediately. It was immediately. It's explosive demand is all I can tell you. Explosive. I mean, and we were selling a million units a month, and that's just as many as we could make. We were literally selling as many as we could make.
How did that impact how you manage the business?
It was ridiculous. I mean, I hired a bunch of people overnight. I was working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day just to try to keep up and with the demand.
Oh my
It was
god.
bizarre.
Do you get any sleep these days, or you still have that schedule?
Oh, I get so much sleep. My sleep problem is that I'm old and it's harder to sleep through the night.
Hey,
So
hey,
it's just the opposite.
no, it's definitely hard to sleep through the night, but you're definitely not old.
Okay, thank you.
So that's the Model A or the Model T, the scooter world, and we'll
Yep.
get to Model C and D in a sec. No, we won't. We won't go down all the way down the line. But I am really curious about because if you check out your website now, I think anybody who just knows Razor for that scooter in the early 2000s would be absolutely blown away by how many different products you offer now and how many things you're involved in and how you have a company and team have evolved over the years. How would you characterize the approach you take to adding new products to the mix?
Well, again, believe it or not, the real huge growth from the company has been, from this trend spotting. I mean, obviously we make variations on the trends once they come out, but most of the time I'm working the really huge items that we make and that really driven growth in the business have been from inventors, and I've seen them actually spotted them on the street, being used, and then worked with the inventor. Sometimes I actually can work with the inventor before it's, actually on the market at all. But usually I'm, working with some small inventor who has a teeny little bit of distribution. I see a couple of them so that would be like the ripstick was a really important product for us that a lot of people know.
Yeah, I was going to
That was
say
a
that
huge
that
craze.
brings up whole new memories again as well.
There you go. And then, I noticed like adults riding around gas mini motorcycles in LA. And that led us to make a little electric motorcycle, which became a huge trend. And it became part of our, it became part of now is like the main part of our business is electric motorcycles and electric scooters. Again, electric scooters probably wasn't a craze, but they were definitely out there. And I saw that, obviously as a scooter maker, we could really capitalize on that market. So we entered that market, and but again, we were much less expensive because we had huge manufacturing capacity, and so we dominated and grew the electric scooter market for the last 15 years, and that's become a huge market for us. And then that eventually evolved into like the adult electric scooters, probably in the last 4 or 5 years with Bird and Lime. But that we were doing a million electric scooters a year before the adult scooter craze that's come on now. And now, of course, we're doing adult scooters. But yeah, I generally am looking for trends in the culture, and then I hop on them, and then I expand on them. So, and then another one of our big recent products is the hoverboard, and that was created by an inventor I'd worked with maybe 5 or 7 years before that on another item that did really well for us, but it exploded into the market. And so we're the creators of the hoverboard too. Now, a lot of people have, copied us, and we're frantically enforcing our patent, but that's another example of an item that just exploded on its own. And then, we're, there to service the market and provide huge quantities for people.
And by the hoverboard, you mean like the two-wheeled, like no handle,
That's right.
standing straight up?
That's right. Our brand is the Hover Tracks, but the inventor, you know, created that brand. But
Perfect. Well,
that's what it is.
I know you and team are super innovative. I'm sure it's only a couple of years now before we get like true hoverboards, like not even touching the ground.
That's right. Well, you keep that in mind. When we get that, that's the end of
Yeah,
all
I think
other
just
wheels.
you just cover the
Go
world
ahead.
in magnets and put magnets on the
That's it.
bottom of it. I think that's how it works, right?
Yeah. Someday.
Innovation. Perfect. But this the evolution, the assortment of your products over time and how things change is really, really fascinating. Electric as I guess a subcategory is a huge area of business and also a huge thing that people are using these products in so many different ways. How has the process for you and team been, to educate yourselves on electric vehicles slash toys and actually roll those out?
Well, there was a learning, again, this for us, it's a very old, again, very soon after the original Razor scooter, within a year or two, we were doing electrics. So it's been a long, learning curve. The hardest thing for us is learning how to make reliable products. The scooter is such a simple product that there's nothing breaks and it doesn't need any repairs. And when we started to do electrics, there was a lot of learning so that we would make things that were reliable and also that we could have a big customer service department that could handle sending out, replacement parts and when things wear out, all that kind of stuff was a big learning curve.
I mean, it's got to be pretty surreal to look back at all this growth and all these different products over the years. What's in addition to your tips on trend spotting, which has obviously been instrumental to everything you've done and all the hot crazes you've been in. What would you say is your number one tip for growing a business and continuing to innovate over the years?
Part of growing a business, I would say, is I was always very focused on the finances and making sure, that I was not overspending, so that I would always be around to take advantage of the next, hit. So I'm very old school. I'm adding people, adding facilities, adding stuff only after the demand is there. I don't put a huge amount of money into the business without the demand being there to justify it. And then when you're doing that, you're there to take advantage of opportunities they presented. And if you spent all your money, then you're gone and you don't have a chance. And then the other thing is act decisively. So it's a little separate from like spotting trends. You have to, even if you're not spotting trends, you have to be able to make decisions quickly and not like be a perfectionist. Is my way of look that I had to sort of learn because I'm a perfectionist by nature. But I could see that in the real world, there's a lot of value to acting, perfect is enemy of the good. You have to make decisions quickly and act quickly in the real world.
The real world. They should make a show about that. If you're craving some more real world behind the scenes stories from the Wild Business Growth Podcast, would like some real world podcasting tips as well from the mind behind MaxPodcasting, I won't reveal who it is, I have the place for you. Go to MaxPodcasting.com, scroll down, and sign up for the Podcasting to the Max newsletter. That's at MaxPodcasting.com. Podcasting to the Max. Now, let's quote unquote quickly wrap this thing up. Well, you could not have queued that up any better because we are going to wrap up quickly with some rapid fire Q&A. You ready for it?
Okay. Yes.
All right. Let's get wild. Other than the ones you mentioned, what would you say is maybe the most bizarre or out of the box product that Razer as a company has sold in the past couple decades?
Oh my goodness. I try to keep things, realistic. We made motor shoes so that you could, or heel wheels so that you can strap them to your shoes and like motor around without anything else. Yeah.
I don't know if it was you or somebody else, but I remember, what are they called? Heelys? There used to be a line of shoes that had wheels in them.
Exactly. So, and I put motors in those. So Heelys was the thing, and I was going to do Heelys with motors, and that was kind of wild. I've made scooters that, with sparks that flame shoot out the back, all kinds of, a 10-year-old boy appealing things, and we made that was really sort of off of what we normally do. We made sound chairs that you would hook up to your computer game, and they would vibrate and envelop you in sound while you're playing your video games. So we done all kinds of inventive things. As I've gotten more seasoned, I sort of recognize that there's a lot of value into not getting too far outside your lane, so you can focus on your own market and not try to too much to go into like home furniture, for example. We did great. It was a huge craze, but then it was hard for us to stay focused as it evolved.
Right. Yeah. With home furniture, I mean, it's just too comfortable of a space to be in.
There you go. There you go.
I'm cracking up because you keep talking about kind of alluding this concept of thinking like a 10-year-old boy or being a 10-year-old boy. And we previously had on the podcast Nancy Cartwright, the voice of Bart Simpson, which
There you go.
super cool. And she literally she's got books and audio books that are around the idea of my life as a 10-year-old boy. So you two need to connect.
It's a very important stage in life. I will tell you that. At least for me too.
It is. And like a 10-year-old, I have the slowest rapid fire of all time. So we'll get to the next question. So
Okay.
what's the most impressive thing or trick that you've ever seen anybody do in a Razor scooter?
Oh, they are so good. I've seen people go down these giant ramps and then do multiple flips, off those, like I'm saying 50, 60, 70 feet high. It's incredible what people can do, just like skateboards.
Yeah, the amount of time it takes to do that and how acrobatic you need to be is unbelievable. And then I saw in your background that as a teenager, you spent some time as a Domino's pizza delivery boy. So
Yes, I did.
what's something surprising about being a pizza delivery driver that only people who have been delivery drivers know?
You have to be very good at mapping out where you're going because it could be a bunch of pizzas and it's all a race against time. Back when I was doing it, I think they changed it because of the danger, but it was all you got paid more for being very speedy. It's a pretty fun race car type of job back in the day when I did it.
And then last one, you also and this is like the coolest fun fact of a younger in life job I've ever heard. But you spent some time managing a stand at the Minnesota State Fair for selling Rubik's cubes. So, what's the shortest amount of time you've ever completed a Rubik's cube?
I hate to correct you on your facts, but I sold solution books to the Rubik's Cube.
Hey, you're just one step ahead.
Yeah, but I never I've never solved a Rubik's cube. So, I've never read the book. I think this is a theme. I don't really have particular interest in toys, but I just did it. And Rubik's cubes at that time were obviously a huge trend. So that was my first hopping on a trend. I was able to sell the books. I had to like put a sticker over the retail price of the book because they were in such high demand that I was able to charge more than the retail price for the book.
Oh my god.
I was a Rubik Cube book price gouger in my youth. But I was only a teenager. I never gouge it anymore. Our prices are fixed.
If you just read one of your own books, you probably would have known how to solve one, I think.
Absolutely. I was just not I was in it for the business side of it.
Hey, well, hindsight's 2020. But Carlton, thank you so much. This has been awesome and a true dream interview walk down memory lane. So I really appreciate.
Oh, you're the perfect guy for this interview.
Yeah,
It's absolutely the right age, and you were obviously interested in the world and using all involved in all my trends. So that's fantastic.
perfect. You're the creator of lots and lots of like endless childhood memories for so many people around my age. And you know how trends work. Probably, if stuff ever dies down in popularity, like 65 years from now, some of the stuff might be bigger than ever. So
It's coming back. Yeah, I just did. You just have to tell your children about it so they can bring it back. That's how it'll work.
Exactly. Well, Carlton, thank you so much. I know if you're interested in buying anything from Razor or learning more, you can go to razor.com, Razor. And I don't know why I spelled that. Obviously, Razor is spelled that way. But do you have, is there anywhere that people can reach out to you, or you prefer to keep it to just the company?
I think they can reach me through the company. I think that's the best way. I'm not an Instagrammer or anything like that. I'm very old school. So, but this has been a wonderful podcast. You were a really good interviewer.
Thank you. Right back at you. You're a decent guest. No, but
Okay.
no, thanks again. Last thing, final thoughts, stage is yours. It could be a quote, a line, whatever you think the next hot trend is going to be, whatever you want. Send us home here.
The next hot trend, you're never going to know it till you see it. And you can never think about it. It just appears before your eyes, and you have to have that spidey sense to identify it as a trend.
I spidey sense Carlton working on a new trend as we speak. Thank you so much, Carlton, for coming on the podcast, for bringing Razor scooters to the U.S. and enhancing so many children's childhoods and beyond through so many amazing products and toys. And thank you, Wild listeners, for tuning in to another episode. If you want to hear more wild stories like this one, make sure to follow the Wild Business Growth Podcast on your favorite app and tell a friend about the podcast. And then go find a Razor scooter, whether it's electric or manual, old school, and go scoot around. You can also find us on Good Pods, where there are some fantastic podcasts and podcast people and recommendations. And for any help with podcast production, you can learn more at MaxPodcasting.com and sign up for the Podcasting to the Max newsletter on that homepage. Until next time, let your business run wild.
Bring on the bongos!